Well, hello, hello, hello. I am Pastor Rhonda, founder of Celebrate Life Cancer Ministry, and your host for Celebrate Life today. And we have a very good topic to share with you today, and it's Alzheimer's awareness. And I have my friend Asante Foster, who is here, that is going to lead this conversation for us. So, how are you today, Asante?
I am well. How about yourself?
Simply marvelous. So, why
Hmm.
don't you go ahead and get us started on this conversation of Alzheimer's?
Okay, so first, what I found to be the most important thing about Alzheimer's that most of us, especially us in the community, aren't aware of is that Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia. So you want to look at dementia as a house and Alzheimer's as a room in the house
Mm.
that's affected. And the room in your brain where Alzheimer's affect is considered the hippocampus, which is responsible for memory and learning. So Alzheimer's will affect your memory and learning, and then as it progresses over time, it will start to, circulate around the brain, taking out all aspects of it, and then you ultimately die.
Mm.
And that's how you die from Alzheimer's.
And tell me that again, because I didn't think you were going there.
Right. Well, I know, right? Straight to death. But because, well, let me back up too. So both my grandmothers died from Alzheimer's. My grandfather was just diagnosed with it. I'm one of his caregivers. I have great aunts that have had this. So this has really plagued my family tree. And it got me to thinking, like, can I get this? Can my daughter get this? And when I started doing research, I discovered that I could and she could. But hereditary doesn't necessarily mean that you will automatically get it. Now, going back to answering your question on clarity for Alzheimer's, it is the most common form of dementia. A lot of people, like if you say, oh, my grandmother died from Alzheimer's, a lot of people say, oh, yeah, my mom had dementia. Similar, but not the same. And the way that it's always been told in layman's terms is that dementia is, look at it as the house. And in the house, you have your living room, your bathroom, your dining room, and Alzheimer's may occupy one of the bedrooms. So it falls under dementia, if that
Okay,
makes sense.
that makes sense. It's
Because
a
dementia,
form of dementia.
correct. Dementia is cognitive impairment, meaning something is going on in your mind. Alzheimer's is specifically going on in your hippocampus, which is responsible for memory.
Okay. All right. So keep telling us.
You said keep telling you, well, there's so many things to it. Like, for instance, what people don't realize is that Alzheimer's, you can be on an Alzheimer's track in your 30s and not know it. Right?
Okay.
Most people think, oh, that's for old people. I don't have to worry about that. And no, that's not true. It's, I kind of lost you here. I'm not sure what happened.
Yep.
Oh,
Go ahead.
it's for old people or when you are 65 years and older, but they scientifically proven that once you've been diagnosed with Alzheimer's at age 65 and older, you really had it 20, 30 years prior. So I don't understand why we're focusing on Alzheimer's after age 65. It's like this is the way I see it, because age 65 is generally when you can retire in America. Right? And once you retire, you slow down. When you slow down, Alzheimer's really shows up. But
Wow.
all the while, we're showing signs of Alzheimer's. Memory is really foggy. We can't remember certain people and places. Time is confusing to us. Misplacing items. Uh, Spatial relationships become a challenge for us. But we disregard all of those signs as I'm working, my husband, my kids, I'm stressed. If you went back to school, like we just push it all off on that, like, oh, that's all it is. I just need to rest. No, that's not the only thing you need to do. And then if you go to the doctor and you start explaining, well, I'm having all this, the first thing the doctor would say, well, are you working? Do you have family? Do you okay? It's probably those things. Kind of dismissed it also. So now you keep thinking that this is normal.
Right, right.
Oh. And then by the time you're 65 or older, you've been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Well, it's because when you first walked in there years ago, or however long ago, explaining the symptoms, it was dismissed.
Mm. Wow. Yeah, because and I'm going to toss something in that we didn't talk about, but I mean, for cancer survivors, there's something called chemo brain,
Mm.
and it's the effect that chemo has on us after we have completed care, or in the
Mm-hmm.
midst of it sometimes. Um, and even that, to know the difference of when it's quote unquote chemo brain and when it could potentially be dementia or Alzheimer's or something
Mm-hmm.
else where we continue pushing things aside.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's giving me a lot to think about there.
Right. And I mean, you can get tested and tested in a sense where you can get an evaluation, right, on where you are, and let's see, what changes the following year. And that technical evaluation is called a neurological evaluation. And I myself actually went in and got tested because I'm looking at my family tree and I'm like, okay, all I see is Alzheimer's on both sides.
Okay.
Um, and I'm also dismissing and, setting aside, oh, I'm just busy. Oh, my family. Oh, work. Oh, where did I put this? Oh, I just have a lot going on. I'm pushing all of that to the side. Like, wait a second, let me not put this test to the side. So I remember going to see my doctor and telling her, oh, I'm going to take an Alzheimer's test. And she was like, an Alzheimer's test? You don't need to take that. You're too young for that. You don't have to worry about that till you get 65 or older. Now, not once did I tell her that I'm doing extensive research on it and doing a documentary about Alzheimer's awareness, focusing on why women are more likely to have it than men and why African American women are twice as likely to have it than the national average. I never told her that, right?
Mhm.
I'm just talking with her like, no, I'm asking you for this test. And she says, again, you don't need to worry about that. So I'm like, okay, let me light the fire a little bit, right? Well, both my grandmothers died from it. So, I kind of want to get tested. And she still was like, no. And I couldn't believe that this doctor is telling me no because I'm a patient. I'm asking for service and you're denying me. All right. So at this time, I'm like, can you write in my chart that you're denying this Alzheimer's test? Oh, on second thought, I'll go ahead on and give you a referral to a neurologist. Like, I feel like I shouldn't have had to say none of that because if I had asked her for the flu shot, she would have turned around with the syringe ready to, put it right in my arm. But here I am asking you for basically a mental health evaluation and you're telling me no. I don't have to worry about that. And see, me telling her, well, then I want you to write that on my chart was also a sign for if I get this 65 and older, and I could have
Right.
presented it earlier when I asked you for it, I promise you it's going to be a lawsuit. I promise you. Because at that point, I don't need all the money for care too, which leads me to that. Alzheimer's is the most expensive disease in America.
Really?
Yes.
Why do they say that?
Because of the care, especially when you start to get to your final stages of Alzheimer's, right? This isn't like cancer where you can go and get chemotherapy and the chances of you surviving it are much greater. There is no chemotherapy for Alzheimer's once you're in your final stages. It's almost kind of like, I guess, I'm not too familiar with the final stages of cancer,
Mhm.
but once it's the chemo may or may not work, I'm assuming, or it's
That's
just
true.
the likelihood of surviving becomes, less. And it's the same thing with Alzheimer's when you get to your final stages. But once you get to that final stage, now you need caregivers. Am I
Right?
taking for work to go and do that? Or am I
Mhm.
hiring someone? And if I'm
Right.
hiring someone, how much is that? And if you're in your final stages, that means you can't do absolutely anything. So you need someone to toilet you, to bathe you, to try to get you out of bed if you're not bedridden. If you are, that's a whole nother topic. right?
Mm,
Now I have to try to roll you over, clean you, feed you from a bed. That's expensive because you want someone to come in who's trained to do that.
right.
You don't want TT coming in there trying to do that and she's never done it before. Now, granted, if you teach her that, I'm sure over time family members can learn to do that. But that's also another one of the biggest problems with this. Family members don't want to step in and care,
Right.
which was
Especially
unbelievable.
for the long haul.
Right,
Because what happens is we don't realize we think that everybody's going to get well in a minute, but we don't think about the fact that this could be a long time. We don't expect it to change our lives. We don't expect it to change, to make it something that I must incorporate into my schedule,
mm-hmm.
which means that now I can't do certain things because it might just be me. It might just be me and you.
Right,
And even with two people, that's still a lot
right,
because I'm trying to figure out how to let my life continue to be as it is while I care for this one that can't do anything or extremely limited or simply just needs a babysitter because they're a roamer. They like to go outside in the middle of the night and we can't find them.
right.
So
And that person is considered a wanderer.
a
Um,
wanderer.
a wanderer. One of my great aunts, she's a wanderer. And actually, she's kind of like the catalyst behind why I even decided to do Alzheimer's awareness. Yes, both my grandmothers died with well within 6 months from one another. And it was kind of like, okay, they died from Alzheimer's. I still went to visit them. I still was there, but it was kind of like, okay. And it wasn't until I got a call from a cousin of mine who had asked me if I would help him with his mom who was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And I'm like, the last time I saw her, she was fine. You know what you're talking about? She had Alzheimer's. Um, but he was like, she's in the middle of transferring from independent living, you and your home, right? You and your husband, to now assisted living. Now you're almost like in this hospital/dorm room trying to figure this out. And so I had spent the day with her and absolutely loved it. Yes, she repeated herself a million times. But in between that, we had some really cool conversations, about the family and, being married for so long. Just a lot of wisdom with age, even though she still was repeating herself. I was taking note twice to say the and then one day they told me to pick her up and take her to this rehabilitation center where her husband was receiving care for a surgery. Oh, just drop her off. Okay. And so I did. And something told me just to go back and check on her like an hour later. And I went to check on her and she was gone. And so I instantly just dropped down. I'm boohooing. The nurses are like, what's wrong? Why are you crying? She left. She's fine. She said she was walking home. Now, remind you, she had to be at least about 100 miles away from home. So I'm like, what? And it's 1,000 degrees in LA. Right. And we're in Beverly Hills. That's where the rehabilitation center. So I was like, what do you mean? I'm like, she has Alzheimer's. It literally was like a light switch came on. Everybody was like, oh my God, she has Alzheimer's. Why did you tell us? And I'm like, I didn't think she was going to leave. And if she did leave, I thought you guys would protect her. But they didn't know, for one. And they technically didn't have any legal rights to keep her there because she's not a patient.
Right.
She's not on any paperwork. Her husband is. Now, if she would have tried to leave with him, that would have been alarming. But you're a visitor. You can come and go if you please. So I was like, oh my God. And I had read that when people wander, as that clock is ticking, the likelihood of finding them and finding them alive starts to get slim. So I'm instantly there with it and praying and crying and called the police. And, my first time ever reporting someone missing. Like, you don't learn that in school. If someone's missing, make sure call 911, and this is exactly what you say and what you do. But some common sense kicks in, and at least for me. And maybe about 30, 40 minutes later, the police walked in with her in tow. I was like, thank you, God. Apparently, as I was reporting her missing, a couple was reporting her found.
Wow.
Right, which was a huge blessing. And then the police officer gave me the contact information to the couple that found her, because later on we found out that the husband and a cousin of mine went to high school together and were firefighters together. So it was like, okay, God, I see you. Thank you so much. And so then I just stayed with her for the rest of the day. You know, I canceled my plans and was like, you know what, you just gonna come and kick it with me. And I talk with her like that. Even though she's older, I talk with her kind of like she's my peer. You know, like she's my buddy. I still give her the respect as my auntie and my peer, right? I'm not cussing around her, but we're having a good time. I want her to feel comfortable in my presence, because you're already dealing with a disease that you're confused about. I don't want you to be confused about who I am and why I'm here with you.
Right. So that's really interesting. I have an aunt that early, when she was early stage Alzheimer's, and she came to spend a few days with me. And she explained to me, she said, okay, now I've got this thing, and my brain doesn't always work right. But if I repeat something, can you just act like it's the first time you're hearing it? I think that was the best piece of information that she
Mm-hmm.
could give me, because I knew I had been with some people before and didn't quite understand what it was, but I knew that I had a captive audience that I could talk to.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent time with them, just make my whole thing is just make people laugh.
Mm-hmm.
As silly as it can be, just keep them laughing. Because, I still believe that that laughter is one of the best medicines out there,
Absolutely.
in addition to whatever the doctor gives you. So, and when she said that, I was like, wow, okay, I could do that. And because I haven't been through it, I still can't comprehend what she's going through.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a day, she was here maybe 3 days, and she's standing in the doorway, and she said, how much longer am I going to be here with you? I said, 2 more days. And she said, okay, because if I was going to be here any longer, I would ask you to put signs up,
Mm-hmm.
because I can still read, and I still, can follow directions. I just can't remember. And she said, so now tell me, where's my room? And it was literally 5 steps away from where she was,
Mm-hmm.
and so to be so close, but yet so far.
Mm-hmm.
And not to scream at her and say, it's right there. My goodness, why can't you just turn and you'll be right there? Well, in her mind, she already did all that she could do.
Mm-hmm.
So now she needs some help. And so I was able to, after, we talked about creating a sign. And then I said, now just turn to your left. And she still remembered that, because I still need to know how much can you know, because I don't want to talk down
Right.
to you.
Right.
Because you've been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. I don't want to talk down. I want to stay on the level, but at the same time, I'm learning.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, now, so turn left. She turned left. She said, oh, there it is.
Mm-hmm.
But she just couldn't get that far.
Mm-hmm.
And that was 2, maybe even 3 years later, from now, 3 years ago. And she's still with us,
Mm-hmm.
still pretty much on her own. She could still do some things on her own. And I call her, because she doesn't live here, but I'll call her from time to time and have a conversation. And yes, it goes into the past,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still a good, healthy conversation. And she can tell me a few things of right now. So she's still okay. I'm saying she's still okay.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still a challenge, because yes, you still get to hear conversations over and over.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And actually, she would be somebody who would be really good for this doctor, Dr. Dale Bredesen. He wrote a book called The End of Alzheimer's. He specializes in Alzheimer's. He's in California. And what I loved about his book is that he really talked about how he actually talks about how he has successfully reversed Alzheimer's.
Mm.
Now, of course, like cancer, the earlier you can, catch this, the easier and the better your risk of actually successfully reversing it. And it really is some of your basic techniques. Eating right. We don't
Wow.
eat healthy anymore. In fact, when was the last time you saw a commercial for a piece of fruit? Seriously, we see 10 commercials for fast food all day long, well within an hour. I remember growing up, we used to see the raisins commercials.
Or the banana commercial.
Right, the bananas and apples and grapes all marching along in the line. You don't see that anymore, but you will see a sugary cereal. You will see a nacho burrito hamburger with the cheese dripping and the stacked up fries and the soda. All things bad for you and also contribute to cognitive impairment. But we don't think about that because I got to eat. So most people, they don't care what they're eating, especially when you're on the go.
Right.
You're just trying to eat stuff. But he talks about eating health and basically really adapting a healthy lifestyle. And the main thing I like about his program, because it's what I believe in, there is not a one size fits all for reversing Alzheimer's, because the way you were diagnosed or whatever contributed to your Alzheimer's may not be the exact same reason why I have it. That's part of the reason why it's such an interesting and intricate disease, because there's no one way. There are some foundational things. Like we do know that if you have the APOE4 gene, your risk is greater. Women, risk greater. African American women, greater. Toxic environment, greater. Lack of physical activity. Again, sleep. To me, sleep is one of the most important ones, because when you sleep, especially when you get into REM sleep, which is between the hours of 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., you're able to really dump the toxins from the day. And people think toxins as maybe like cigarette smoke, right? Or gas. No, it's toxic people. This toxic energy that we don't take into effect. Energy is transferred, right? Those type of things, they make a difference. So being able to get a good night's sleep, it really does a lot to your brain, because you're cleaning your brain in essence when you go to sleep. But we working 2 and 3 jobs. We in school. We got family, right? Don't have a newborn. Oh my God, you really not. And by yourself, all of those things over the years, they start to make a big difference, and we don't even realize that.
Right, right. So you talked about you said 3 different things that we need to be mindful of. So the eating was one, and then you talked about I should have a pen right here so I can remember everything. Um, okay,
Physical activity,
and then after that,
sleep.
sleep. Okay,
Right.
then there was the second one. I can't remember what it was, but nonetheless, so there are things that we can do to keep. So are we speaking of a healthier mindset?
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, because you bring that up, one of the things that I found interesting, because now I'm looking for solutions. Okay, I
Right,
see the problem. This is bringing me down. How do we turn this around? So when people get diagnosed, or when people feel like they're on an Alzheimer's track, they don't instantly think that it's a death sentence.
right.
And what I read was, in addition to the eating right, the physical activity, getting sleep, and there's a laundry list of other ones too, playing games, Uno, being around positive people, prayer, meditation, getting vitamin D from the sun, drinking plenty of water, all of the basic things. There's also something, and I was like, this is the most interesting to me, because it's so easy, and I don't understand why we don't do this more often. We say it, but how do you really show it? Which is being grateful.
Mm.
One of the things I noticed, I'm a licensed caregiver, and I only want to deal with people who have Alzheimer's. If you have
Okay.
anything else, don't call me.
Or you have something else plus Alzheimer's?
Well, I actually had a client like that who did have cancer and Alzheimer's, but cancer was the first disease. And he didn't really have, he had more of dementia. than he did Alzheimer's. So there was
Got
definitely some cognitive impairment, but I'm in there and you still smoking cigarettes.
yeah.
How, that was a tough one for me, especially since your main disease is cancer. So that was a tough one for me to continue working with him. But my other Alzheimer's clients, they haven't had any other diseases other than Alzheimer's.
Okay.
But I do have that experience with someone who has two, and that's when I realized that wasn't for me.
Okay.
That it was just Alzheimer's. But one of the things I realized with even being a caregiver to my family members, matter of fact, to everyone, is that they would talk about how grateful they are, or they were, or the things that they have, and it wasn't like material things. They wasn't grateful for a new necklace or a new bag or a new blouse. They were grateful for breath,
Wow.
to
Yeah.
breathe, grateful to sit down at the table and eat, grateful to wash their hands, the little things. So like, let me look up being grateful, because of course I'm grateful. I say it, right? But the more I really took a nosedive into it, I'm like, there's actually scientific evidence that having a gratitude attitude daily will decrease anxiety, depression, stress, and improve your overall mental health, sleep, and physical activity. I'm like, it's weird, but it's so true. Like, they studied this. It's called positive psychiatry, where they
Okay.
have seen where you're basically rewiring your brain to be grateful, and being grateful because it flows from the top, right? So if I'm up here dizzy and distracted, that's what's going to happen all the way down. But if I'm here bright and happy and grateful and smiling and joyful, and not in a fake way, right?
Yes. Yes.
But actually, like, I am grateful for the sun,
Right.
and really believe that and feel that, you'll start to carry that energy everywhere you go, and you become this magnet for all things grateful. And you're like, how is this happening? And for me, I tell people it's like Wi-Fi. You can't see Wi-Fi, but you know it's working. And if you start having technical difficulties, it's because something is wrong with the Wi-Fi. And it's just like with your brain and being grateful. You start having more problems than blessings, it's because you're not checking in up here. And how do you check in up here? By being grateful. Also, being grateful will allow you to live in the present. That's why they
Yes.
say anxiety is the future, depression is the past. Okay, well, what's the present? What's the present feeling? Gratitude. So, having said that, my daughter and I have this, and it's called a Grateful Bank. And really simple to use. You open it up, take out all the contents, you get a pen with a stylus, 60 grateful cards, and it says on each one, I am grateful for. And it could be something short. I'm grateful for 2 feet, right? Lose a leg, lose a foot. Did I lose your audio?
No,
I
keep
keep,
going.
oh,
There's music. The neighbors are blasting the music.
oh, it happens. So we thought, wow, this is really something different. It's unique. It's great for all ages. And then also what helps you to even get your mind set, right? To relax, because we're not relaxing either, right? And if people say, oh, you should meditate. Well, how do I do that? A lot of people don't know how to do that. Well, you can look it up online. Well, you look up online and there's like 50 million pages of what you should and shouldn't listen to. Now I'm even more distracted, right? I'm like, forget it. So what we did was came up with a way for you to also listen to meditation music, where you scan this and the song will pop up for you to play. So this is what I like to call our one-stop shop for boosting your overall mental health. Again, easy, different. We have this clear one. We have the green and the clear for men, because we don't want to forget about them, right? They also have mental health issues. And then we also have the green for women.
Awesome. So when you so if we can continue to be grateful and to genuinely be grateful,
Mm-hmm.
we begin to see the little things of life. that
Right.
are so precious. You know, how time begins, every moment of time seems to be more precious than the last. You know, to
Mm-hmm.
being able to see, you know, I would say that the sun is a big grateful, but just the sky, because you know we just expect it to be there. And I'm sorry, we
Right.
live in California, so you know, sunny California, even on a bad day, is still a good day compared to what the rest of the United States sees.
Right, right. And I mean, with us being from California, I remember what was this last year during the well, I know it's still the pandemic, but last year when it really first hit, all the fires that was happening out here, and it had turned the sky orange. It
Yes,
was like, and then for me, it was like, oh my God, where's the sun? What is this orange? I've never seen the sky. Like you were saying, we're not appreciating or grateful for the sky. The sky was orange.
right.
Because I'm taking for granted, the sky is always going to be blue, maybe gray, maybe white, maybe cloudy, but that's about it. It was orange.
Yes, fire still burning everywhere, but we
Right,
take too many things for granted.
right, right.
You know,
And
even go ahead.
no, that's part of our mental illness is because we're constantly, wanting more instead of appreciating what we have, but we take what we have for granted.
Mhm.
Exactly what you were saying is exactly the reason why we created this bank, so that people can learn to appreciate what they have. Because once you start doing that, the stuff that you want will even just start to show up to you. Because again, now you become a magnet.
Yes,
And I
yes.
can begin to tell you the stuff that has come my way where I'm like, okay, I'm grateful for, and not that I'm writing these things down so that I can receive things, but I definitely just see a difference in my mental health.
Mhm. So for a person, would the person with Alzheimer's be the person that should be writing down what they're grateful for?
Everybody should be writing down what they're grateful for. Just so happen, this is also something you can do with a person who has Alzheimer's, because it's, again, this is boosting your overall mental health. And science has also proven that when you handwrite your thoughts, you're boosting your memory.
Mm,
It's one thing to say it, it's another thing to write it down. That means there's a conscious effort from thought to pen to paper to write down what it is you're saying or thinking. You're more likely to remember that.
right. So then, and then I would think that even reading it back to them or having a time where we pull one out, say they're
Mm-hmm,
having a bad day,
mm-hmm,
and let's just pull one out and talk
mm-hmm,
about it and think about it and, you know, see what kind of conversation or thoughts that can generate for the patient.
mm-hmm. Well, this, I don't want to look at this as just for a patient thing, but a person thing, right? Internationally, because we all have something to be grateful for. My daughter is 12 and I have her do this every day.
Mm,
And when she doesn't do it, it's almost like I'm telling her to go eat a Snickers, that eat a Snickers commercial. I'm like, go and write down something you're grateful for, because you need to change your attitude right now. I'm not liking it. And as crazy as it sounds, she'll come back a totally different person.
mm,
And sometimes she writing down stuff because I've seen her box, her bank, and she's like, I'm grateful for, and it'll be some game that she plays online. That's like, you grateful for an online game? Okay. But whatever it is that works for you, if that makes you feel good, that's what this is all about. This is an intergenerational bank. Everyone can use this, 5 and older. And we say 5 and older because that's generally when you start writing, and you're learning your alphabet, so you can write down one words, because it only takes one word. You don't have to write I am grateful for. The card already says that. All you have to do is flip it over and you can write down again, I'm grateful for sun. I'm grateful for wisdom. I'm grateful for perfect timing. We forget those things make a difference in our life because we're too busy looking at all the different celebrities online and what they have. We don't know what's behind that.
right, right. And we don't know the price that they paid to get there.
Right, right. There's a cost for everything. So because I started to read so much information that made so much sense to me, I was like, this is common sense to me. I know common sense is not that common, but I do like to believe I have a little bit of it. And it was like, I started to kind of get upset behind this, because why don't we know about this? Why did it take both my grandmothers dying and me becoming a co-caregiver for my great aunt to find this out? Well, who else? And African American women are twice as likely to have this than the national average. Oh no. So I'm like, well, I want to do something about it, but I don't know what. Or somebody needs to do something about it, but I don't know what. And it literally was like I heard this voice saying, "You can." What can I do? I don't have a PhD in nothing. Maybe common sense, but definitely not this science you're speaking of with Alzheimer's. And the more I kept questioning, do what? What can I do? It came out, you can do a documentary. And it was like, okay, I've been in the film industry for a very long time, relocated from San Francisco to Los Angeles to, work. And I successfully had done that for many years until I got pregnant and started doing my own thing. And then, the industry is fickle. But this particular project is there's passion behind it. There's a different feeling with this project that was and is just undeniable. And so my daughter and I have been working on this for the past 4 or 5 years. But we're just now, talking about this and, really wanting to spread the word and this product, because I just don't want to tell you what the problem is. I want to have a solution.
Right, right. So, I'm thinking about your daughter and going away and writing in finding her gratitude moment for that day in the midst of her, and I'm going to call it brokenhearted, in the midst of her challenging mindset at that moment, and to be able to come back with a different attitude. So many of us need to do that more often. I tend to just get quiet and just be in my own space, stop answering the phone. And I know a lot of people think I always answer my phone, but I don't always answer my phone. Just so I can get with me. But a lot of times I don't think. At that time, I don't spend it thinking. I spend it breathing.
And that's a good thing.
But at the same time, I don't have a thought that's bringing me back. So by the time I get up, I might feel better, but I have not moved forward. If I do that. So I think, even writing down something, a gratitude word, just doing something intentional, on purpose, and knowing why I'm doing this, so that, because we could, and we do, often want something different. But because we didn't identify what it is, we could have accomplished it, but we don't know because we never said what it would look like.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Writing it down. And that's the thing about writing it down and me saying that you become this magnet, because it's almost like you manifest what it is that you were wanting. But, and you kind of remove that blockage. Like you were saying, you feel better afterwards, but like, okay, I'm better. And how do I move forward with still, feeling better and don't have to stop again to do this, which is exactly the reason why we came up with this. Now, we'll also have a journal later on down the line, but for now, it's this because we thought, okay, this is something that will actually, you'll stop and look and think about this, as opposed to a journal. You may, flip through that or look at it as just another book, but this is an actual, device, with our likeliness on it. And then you can, again, meditate here. And then when you come out of your meditation, then, okay, because now you should have a clear mind, and then you can write down what it is you're grateful for. Be it one word, a paragraph, and keep in mind, it's 60 cards in there. So if you want to write down 10 things in one day, totally fine. But the more you use it, just like a vitamin, the better.
Yeah.
I've also read too, and this is the reason why I use this as like the card as a vitamin, because I've read that medication, if you sleep well, eat right, physical activity, meditate, gratitude, drink water, don't smoke, stay away from a lot of sugar and a bunch of other things. If you do all of those things, medication won't even be on your list.
Wow.
You won't need it. But we live in a society, unfortunately, where we're looking for a one size fits all pill.
Yeah.
So they came
Yeah.
out with what
But
you
yeah.
right, right. You know, unfortunately, we can definitely change that mindset again with being grateful, you know, with exercising. And because being grateful can help boost everything else you need, I don't see where medicine will come in at. You know, they have this new Alzheimer's medication that came out. I forget the name of it. Alurum, I forget the name of it. Nonetheless, it's $56,000 per year per person.
Oh, oh.
Right, right. All of the studies and research about it has said we hope it work.
Mm.
Not this will definitely do this to cognitive impairment. Now they did, to my knowledge, discover that it will help to reduce the amyloid plaque on your brain, which is what amyloid plaque can start to intercept communication between the neurons.
Okay.
So they can't communicate. Case in point, if I can't tell you this stove is hot and you put your hand down,
So it has a little the space in between. Something's going
right?
on that it's not
Exactly.
connected.
Exactly. And that's the plaque.
Okay.
It's blocking it. So it has, you know, in certain studies shown to be able to reduce that plaque, but it didn't show that it can reduce it for people who have MCI. Well, yes, MCI, mild cognitive impairment, or Alzheimer's later. It was only for like early onset.
Okay.
So, but most people who have Alzheimer's right now are looking for that magic pill. And you telling me this magic pill has only been tested for people who are in their early stages? What's going to happen to me? There's just so many different things about it that I say no to.
Okay. And so clearly we're not telling people not to take their medication. But the more that we begin doing the healthier moves, you
Right.
know, what regardless of what the, I shouldn't say totally regardless, but in many cases, if it's a maintenance for your health, then eating healthier, getting the rest, getting exercise, and doing those healthier things should
Mm-hmm.
cause your body to regulate itself to such a point that you would be able to, that the doctors will be able to let you off the hook with some of the medications that they're giving to you, which says then that you should be going to the doctor on a regular basis so that the doctor can do evaluations. But what we tend to do is we tend to decide we're not going to take it anymore. Our body is not ready for us to stop taking it anymore. We stop getting refills, and then we go back to the doctor eventually. And they're like, what are you doing? What happened? You haven't asked for refills. You don't, your body, your numbers are off the chart. And then you're like, well, I thought I didn't need it anymore. That's not what we're saying. We're
Right. I
saying
mean,
get things in order, stay in touch with your doctor, and they should begin to let you go from some of the medication. Because some medications, if you jump off too fast, it could be detrimental to you.
and I want to say all of them. You know, I haven't read anything that says you can go cold turkey on a medication, especially if you've been taking this medicine over a long period of time, years. You definitely want to wean off medicine slowly. Um, because yeah, I mean, it's just like a person trying to, you know, cold turkey drugs. I mean, like street drugs, right? You know, coke
Right.
and crack. There's no way that they can get off of that just cold turkey. You have to, over time, you know, wean yourself off. And it's the same thing with a prescription. So
Right.
no, not definitely not telling people get off all your medicine right now and start working out, eating right, adapting this new, you know, healthy lifestyle, buy our gratitude bank, you know, no, but definitely you want to do what works for you, which is why we all understand the word diet, but I prefer healthy lifestyle because we also have to keep in mind you have to eat right for your blood type. So I don't want to tell you you should be eating XYZ every day when your blood type might call for something else, or you might be allergic to it. we all know what healthy eating looks like. We all know that ice cream and cake and soda is bad for you. We know those things. Sugar, period, is something that you should have less in your healthy lifestyle. We all know that. And increase water. I don't know anybody who has ever been allergic of water. Drink that. It really works. So I don't know. Like I said, this has just been a fascinating journey we've been on with discovering a lot of things about Alzheimer's, especially as it pertains to us as African American women. The documentary is, it's Alzheimer's we talking about. So for me, it was extremely important. Well, how do we keep this fun?
Right.
If people not get bored and feel like, again, oh, this is for old people, which is the reason why my daughter is a huge part of it. Because, okay, a 12-year-old talking about Alzheimer's, why?
Yeah.
So,
All right. So prevention is possible.
absolutely. Absolutely. But like you said, you do have to go to the doctor. If you are feeling like you are becoming more forgetful and repeating yourself more often, and I'm not talking about the type of repeating where your child isn't listening to you and you're like, I said pick this up 50 million times. I'm not talking about that kind of repeating, right? I'm talking about you really just asked the question, forgot the answer, and you're asking it again. Or you made a comment, a couple of minutes later go by and you repeat that same comment, and maybe the person you're talking with is like, you already said that, and you're like, oh, I did. Like, you don't even remember you just said that comment. When you start having those type of problems, misplacing things more often than not and can't find them, spatial relationships become challenging, your problem solving is becoming challenged. You need to go and get a neurological evaluation. And to be quite honest with you, I think if you don't have any of those symptoms, you still should get one, because a neurological evaluation will give you a baseline on where you are mentally.
Yeah. So what about the one where you got up to go get something? You can't remember what you got up for?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't want to say it, well, Bill Cosby said back in the day, he said, well, if you forget what you were going after, go back and sit down where you were. And a lot of times it will come back to you. And I've done that and it has worked for me. But sometimes I get back there and I'm like, mm-mm. So I just say, never mind. It must not have been important. But if that happens too often, then write the stuff down. So you might not want to go to the doctor today, but
Mm-hmm.
when you get to your next appointment, when you schedule that physical, when you schedule that follow up with your oncologist or the diabetic doctor or whatever, whoever it is,
Mm-hmm.
take your list of concerns with
Mm-hmm.
you.
Mm-hmm.
And they might say, oh, I don't do this. You need to talk to your general practitioner about that. Or you need a referral to
Mm-hmm.
someone else about that. But at least have your note, at least begin asking the question so you can get what you need. Because for everything, whether it's cancer, whether it's Alzheimer's, whatever the case might be, early detection saves lives. Early
Right.
detection helps us have a shorter distance between where we are now and being returning to healthy.
Mm-hmm.
But if you wait until it's whoo, then we're gonna have whoo to deal with.
Right, right. And that's exactly everything you just said is exactly the reason why African American women are twice as likely to have it. We don't go to the doctor, we don't get checked. We carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. We don't have a release. Some of us may have therapy, but most of us don't. And then if you do want it, you can't afford it. Or again, this is where the gratitude bank come in, because at least you can start to dump some thoughts here and kind of rewire your brain, if you're not going to go to the doctor. But we don't go to the doctor. In fact, the first person diagnosed with Alzheimer's in history was a female, Augusta Dieter. She was 55 years old when she died. She died at 55. So if science, and this was like 100 years ago. So now science is telling us that once you've been diagnosed, you had it 20, 30 years prior. So how old was she when she started having symptoms? extremely young. And she actually only went to the doctor because of her husband took her there. And 100 years ago, he took her to an asylum because she kept accusing him of cheating on her.
Oh,
I thought that
wow.
was interesting. I'm like, that's a symptom of Alzheimer's? But because if that's the case, we all we But what I realized is that with early onset, you have mood changes, personality changes. So here we are married, and now all of a sudden you're accusing me of cheating on you, and it became like an aggressive behavior. So he's like, something is wrong with you. So he took her to the asylum, and she's sitting in there, and there was a doctor, Alois Alzheimer's, who, he studied this, and this is the reason why the disease is named after him. And he said, he studied cognitive impairment, but her cognitive impairment was different because when he would ask her questions like, what's your name? And she said, Augusta Dieter. Okay. What's your husband's name? Augusta Dieter. So he's like, this is a different type of, cognitive impairment because I'm asking you two different questions and you're giving me the same answer. And that's where the neurological evaluation comes in. It's just a couple of questions. Like you said, going back, and this is exactly the reason why I brought her up, because when you do go to the doctor, it's just a couple of questions. It's not like they put some type of head, space looking helmet on you with these wires, and they're like, okay, let me know if you can feel this. It's not that at all. It's, what time is it? So because I'm super at risk of having Alzheimer's, but I definitely practice everything that I just shared with you, I also am in the documentary turning the cameras on myself to show you exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
This is what this test looks like, and I'll share my results so people can know this is a normal or not normal. So, yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. There's so much. There's so much, and I know that Celebrate Life Cancer Ministry is our focus is cancer, but cancer survivors are also caring for loved ones. And these loved ones are, have a number of different ailments, and Alzheimer's is one of them. And you don't always get the support from family. You can't always attend various workshops because you've got to pay attention to what's going on at home. And that can be a 24-hour, and I'm going to call it a gig, because it's your whole new life. It's a whole new life that you have to adjust to, and it's adjusting every day with or without your permission.
Absolutely. I had this one client, 90 years old. She would have her good and bad days, but for the most part, it was really, for lack of a better word, easy to take care of her. And I'm the type of caregiver, I'm coming in with activities, I tailored to you. So if you like playing bingo, I'm going to get bingo. If you like listening to country music, that's what we listening to all day. It was a tailored care just for you. But one day, getting to what you were saying about it's changing without you, she fell. My heart leaped out of my chest. I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? She had actually slipped, and there's a long story to that. So I'll just get to, the root of it. That changed. Because here we are every day. I'm coming in, getting you up, getting you dressed. We're getting ready to have breakfast. We'll listen to your country music, play some down, or go outside. Whatever it is we're going to do to keep you active, what we've been doing. And then all of a sudden, we actually had to call 911. I had to call her daughter, and we had to call 911 because she kept saying she was in pain. So it was like, oh my God. And since I was the only one there with her, I told the doctors exactly what it is that I'm telling you, which is the truth. And then she's laying there, and I'm like, I'm so sorry this happened. I know. She was like, oh, it's okay. I'll see you next week. It was like, it gets weird sometimes because on one hand, it's like, wailing like a baby. And I'm like, oh my God, I feel so bad. And then cut to, it's okay. I'll see you next week.
Oh.
And then when I went back the following week, I noticed that she had a bruise on her other leg. So I'm like, what happened? Well, now, like you said, here's this new phase. She's falling more often than not,
Right. Right.
which is scary because how do we move you from the car to the house? Now,
Mm,
instead of everybody just getting out the car, I have to come around, walk with you, make sure. So you're right. It does change as they change without you being ready or not.
right. So why don't you tell us one more time about the gratitude box?
So the gratitude bank again comes in our clear, which is our most famous, and then we also have I don't know if you can see it, the green, and it's a bank with the 60 cards and a pen inside, a stylus. And again, take it like a vitamin or drinking water. You know, the more you do it, the better it is for you. And some people have said, well, what happens after I use all the 60 cards, which I thought was like,
Duh.
I don't want to say that,
So you
but
want to make some more?
right, get some. But you know what? There's actually I have one customer who she bought one for her and all her family members, and what they're going to do when they finish is exchange them. I thought
Wow.
that was super cool, right? You know, you can see what a person is grateful for, see if you're thinking the same thing they're thinking. It was just really cool. And then, of course, you can always order more cards. These we do sell these separately, so you just don't have to buy the bank in order to get this. You can get this separately or in addition to the bank. And you can go to our website, www.puzzled2020.com, to purchase these banks in different colors.
All right. Very good. Well, before we go, is there anything you'd like to add, and maybe you didn't think about while we were chatting, so we could just wrap it up for today?
No, just, it's important to get a checkup from the neck up.
Exactly. So I just want to thank you, Asante, for coming on and sharing with us. Just to be mindful of our mindset, whether it's chemo brain, whether it's Alzheimer's, whether life is just changing and taking a toll on us, changing course on us. Whatever it is, get that checkup from the neck up so that we can prevent anything, or we can know what's going on, we can be aware of it. And then if there's anything going on, we can catch it early so that it can be a benefit. And for those cancer survivors and it's chemo brain, now that I've had this conversation, it's time to talk to our doctors about that. And what's the name of that test again?
A neurological evaluation.
So we can get a neurological evaluation, even for chemo brain type things, so that we can, get a baseline, figure out where we are now, find out if it's really chemo brain or if it's something else going on, rather than just chalking it up and saying that it's chemo brain. And writing things down is a activity to help us to remember things as well. So don't eliminate the pen and paper and don't put it aside just for gratitude, but also use it in your daily activities so that it can help stimulate your brain to begin to think more often. So I really, really want to thank you, Asante, for coming on and sharing this with us so that we can have a brighter perspective on what's
Oh,
going on in our mind.
thank you, Pastor Rhonda, for having me. I appreciate you and what it is that you're doing. I think it's phenomenal. The more awareness there is out there about, what's going on with our brain and our body, the better and healthier lives we can have.
Yeah. So as I always say, until next time, choose life.